timer. Damn it. I didn't put the timer. They put the timer. Hold on. Hi, Ivan. Bang, bang, Niners gang. Oh, no Niners. What player did made you become a Niners fan? I wonder. Hey, welcome back to Norby's Worldwide Activities, otherwise known as NWA. And A is spelled AYE for A. Shout out to Big Hi Ivan and ACB Chemistry. What's going on, guys? Let me see. Let me put this over here. Where's this thing? Oh, here it is. All right, ACB Chemistry. Let's see if you got any time today to join the live. I know you had a few words for Mr. America. Maybe you could have a one-on-one with him someday if he hops on. I don't know if he does, but as always, my platform is open to all you guys to come in and talk and talk about things. Uh, sh- Frank Gore, huh? That's who it was. Hi, that's what it was, Ivan. That's who turned you into a Niners fan. Somebody always tells me if somebody's a fan of a team that's out of their state, it's usually because of a player, and I like to agree. Aldo is Nancy Norman. What's up, Aldo Hernandez? Good to hear from you. Good to see you, actually. Where it is? Here it is. All right, so right there, there's the link if you guys want to jump on and I'll talk. Uh, I don't know if start comment means I could be pinning it, but it's there. All right, so let's get to the Trump administration on red alert. We need to get us a public office takeover. We need to get us in. You know what? You're right. You're right, especially right now because every party is making their moves right now. California is pushing for the governor job right now. Everybody knows nobody wants Newsom in here anymore. He knows we don't like him. I mean, and that's I don't think you probably Newsom doesn't know we don't want him because he's surrounded by a lot of yes people, which are usually rich people. Hey, much appreciate that, Ivan. But for the most part, I think every Democrat and Republican independent don't want Newsom as governor. I mean, the fact that that guy got recalled and almost lost, he should have lost. We had the votes. It says a lot about this voting system. And I always say, I don't trust these computers, voting machines. I don't trust them. We should never have computer voting machines because they're too easily manipulated. I mean, at the end of the day, who has complete control of those machines? It's bad when a private company owns the control of those machines. Only 6'4". What's up, man? Thoughts on how Chicago is doing with ICE raids? You know what? That's a good question. That's a good question. For the most part, I don't like these ICE raids specifically because the majority of those raids are targeting my people. You know, like we always say, these are our lands. There's no reason for our people to be hunted down in our lands. And that's what that's pretty much what they're going for. They even say it. They say they're strictly going for our people. And I know why. They're threatened. They see the threat. They say there's too many of them. In 20 years, they're gonna overrun us by the population. And you're right. For the most part, they're right. They should be scared because we are taking over by the numbers. They can't do it, and if anything, their numbers are dwindling dramatically, and they won't say it, but because they know it'll put fear in them, in their people, if they found out that their population is slowly dying out in this country. So they're trying to put the fear in our people to not come here or to hide or to be scared. But for the most part, at the end of the day, our people, we're gonna go to work. Whether they get us or not, we're gonna go to work, and if they get us, we're gonna come back to go back to work until we repeat the same cycle until our children's take control of this system, this governing system, and change the laws. That should be a law in these lands that anybody of indigenous descent of these lands should have the ability to go inside any country on these lands and be allowed to work. If people are indigenous to these lands and their ancestors are, they should be allowed to walk in any part of this country and work. They should. Aldo says Norby's question, Marvelous Minds. Do you guys review the questions and decide not to answer some questions because they're controversial against YouTube policies? For the most part, some are, and I'm glad you asked that. Some are, and for the most part, some of them require a lot more information to uh, to delve into it, and usually the ones that involve like a lot of more explanation, we tend to cut that one off because for the most part, it's gonna take up a lot of the show, and we wanted to get through as many of the community posts that we could just go through, and without having taken it long. Because aside from the community post questions, we have our own topics to get through. Aside from our own topics, we start taking the phone calls, and then you guys know how long those calls can get. Let's see. Only 6-4 says the bankers decide what happens. Wars, president, currency, and for the most part, they do to a certain extent because this is what I keep saying. We got to stop thinking the U.S. only. We got to think everywhere. Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America. As much as they control the cities. The cities is what they control. That's why they have central banks, because that's how they get their power within the cities. But outside of those cities, that you have small regional banks. You have what you call what are those things called? Those other banks, but they're not called banks. They're called what are they called? Credit unions. You have credit unions, and credit union is like the lowest form of banking, from what I know, because they're very local. You really got to know the people that are in there, but they're more open to other people to getting loans. Like for instance, East LA. I want to say East LA had the beginning steps of a credit union, because back in those days they wouldn't give anybody that's Mexican descent, even though they're U.S. citizen, they wouldn't give them any loans. So our people couldn't get loans for a business, loans for a house. We couldn't get any type of loans. So what happened is that a lot of the Mexican Americans, Chicanos, got together. They formed small credit unions. They pulled together as a community to collect money, and people that needed small loans to, like, I don't know, get a deposit for a car, or a deposit to buy a refrigerator. You know, they would loan that money out in within the community. They would collect a small interest, but those were the beginning steps for the credit unions back then. I mean, if you go to throughout all East LA, there's a lot of credit unions, and all of them were based on organizations of the people from that community that came together to put money together so they could loan it out. Let's see. Hey, that's right, Aldo. I got the Ric Flair shirt on. Some questions are neither here nor there. That's right, Zapata. Any thoughts on the current situation in Venezuela? Now, so Venezuela is very interesting because, as we all know, what makes Venezuela very special, aside from its people, its indigenous people, by the way, will be the oil that they have. They have a large reserve of petroleum in there, large. And let's face it, with this, our country wants oil, not our oil, because our oil in this. Here's the thing, you guys gotta realize too. A lot of our oil fields here in the states are privately owned. Privately owned, meaning that the government can't get it. Meaning that the government has to pay them a premium price to get that oil. And for the most part, those private oil companies do export to other countries because they're willing to pay the price. But the US government says, you know what? We don't want to pay that price. We want to take it from another country, send out these corporations to pump it out for us, and then bring it back to the US. Because these private companies already have deals within the government that they're going to use them to supply it, and they're going to give the country a kickback, for giving them those the privilege of exporting and pumping out other countries' oil. And with Venezuela, I mean, and you know what? I actually like Venezuela. A lot of people, you're gonna hear them say, "No, that guy's a dictator. Maduro's a dictator. He is a communist." You're gonna hear all that stuff about it. But you know what? The one thing you don't see are the pueblos. You don't hear nothing from the pueblos. And some are gonna say, "Well, you don't hear from them because they're not allowed to talk." They're allowed to talk. You can find them on YouTube at their pueblos. They're living their life. They don't need to go to the city. The only ones you hear crying in Venezuela are the people in the city. Because back then, when they had a government that was for them, they made a lot of money because a lot of these corporations from the US that went there to go pump oil, they would give kickbacks to the people or politicians from that country. Here you go, we're gonna pump out. Here's your cut. Here's your cut. So a lot of them got rich. Venezuela, a small number of Venezuelans got so rich that in Florida they had their own airport. They had their own airport where it was pretty much all the airplanes from Venezuela would go to this one airport for Venezuelan people. Because when they get there, they will already have shuttles to take them to hotels so they could go buy, so they could go shopping. That's how much money that they had. That they built them an airport just so they could come directly and be treated like stars and just to go shopping, just to drop money. They cry about fracking. No, the Democrats just don't want to drill. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You really got to think about it. Like, for instance, Los Angeles has one of the largest reserve of oil in the country, bigger than Texas. Nobody in the states controls it or regulates it, but they're pumping every day. Every day they're pumping. You never hear anybody talk about, oh, where's all that oil coming from? Because as far as I know, the United States gets its oil from Saudi Arabia. You never hear of like, oh, well, where's all that Texas oil going? Where's all that California oil going? You don't hear anything about it. Why? Because that's not theirs. That belongs to very wealthy, godlike, richly God people. And I say richly God because these people have made so much money throughout their generations that They never they never have to worry about money for like until this good all the way until this government stopped existing, and that's how it is. I mean, you could say it's about fracking, but not really, because they're pumping it every day here. Like literally, you go to like Long Beach, you go to like Culver City, you go to the Fairfax area district. They're always pumping oil every day. Only 6'4". It's all about rare minerals and materials. You know what? That's the big topic right now. That's the whole thing. The whole beef with China is that they're being very greedy with their rare metals. And I don't understand. I mean, I know what rare metals are, but really, China's the only place that's carrying those rare metals in their country and their lands. That's kind of weird. That is kind of weird. Oh, gonna have to get inside this lane here. There you go. Sorry, guys. I am very much in traffic right now, trying to figure out how to get out of it as quickly as possible. But that's the other thing with China. China has that grip on these rare minerals, supposedly. And that's why Trump decided he wanted to put 100% tariffs. 100% tariffs on China. Wow. Feel bad for anybody that's about to order from Timu, because all that stuff is going to be expensive. Aldo says, let's see. Aldo says, communism was created by Jews. They tried to bring communism to Mexico, but didn't stick. They needed a villain, so they created the cartel terrorists just in case they want to declare war on Mexico. Now, I do have my take on the cartels as far as their their founding, as far as their mission statement, if you will. I mean, you got to think about it. All these cartels, they all started off with impoverished people, people that couldn't make money. I mean, you see the guns now, that wasn't there before. You see the Colombian sugar, that wasn't there before. What the cartels were growing was sweet, innocent, yerba buena. That's all they were growing. That's all they were selling. And they were okay with that. They were happy. They were making good money selling yerba buena. But you know who didn't like that? The politicians. Why didn't the politicians like that? Because a lot of these poor folk were starting to make money, were starting to make big purchases, were starting to act like they were one of them. That's a big no-no. You never act like you're equal to a Mexican politician or some of their hierarchy families. But what did they do? They started raiding their farms, their yerba buena farms. They started raiding them. Not only did they raid them, they burned all their crops and they took all their money. I mean, anyone as a farmer knowing, look, this is literally not hurting anybody, and you take your time to grow it, you save your money so maybe you could get a better life out of it. Just for the government or a politician that doesn't like you're making money tells the military to go and burn all your stuff and take your money. I mean, do you blame them for getting upset and figuring out a better way to make their money? I mean, could you imagine if the Mexican government never interfered with them, and all they did was just sell yerba buena? That's all they would. It would eventually become legal. Might have been a big corporation. Mexico would have Mexico did legalize it eventually, federally, by the way. But because a bunch of politicians didn't like these poor people making money, they had to set an example. They had to burn their stuff and take their money. And so you can only do that for so long until they start getting together and start talking amongst each other to figure out a better way to make their money. I mean, you got to ask yourself, what came first, the Colombian powder or the guns? I'm pretty sure it was the guns. The guns came first, and then the Colombian powder. The red cap. Oh, Rock Gladys said nothing bigger than Texas. Let's see. ACB Chemistry says California shouldn't drill or else our water will look black like Texas. Well, it's funny that you would say that because that did happen a long time ago in Venice Beach. Yes, Venice Beach, because there's a lot of oil underneath Venice Beach also. A lot of people don't know that. And for the most part, if you're familiar that with Venice Beach, there are canals that was supposed to be like a replica of the way Venice is in Italy. But the guy that developed it couldn't maintain it, and a lot of the oil started sipping out of the canals, out of the water. So they had to shut it down. It is right now. It's only, from what I hear, is only one third the size of what it used to be, as far as the canals. But no, there was oil there, and at that time they didn't care about any environmental stuff. They just didn't like that. It was just, it looked bad. But no, as far as pumping oil, they've been pumping it. If you go to Long Beach, they're pumping it out of the ocean. You could see the stations. You could see where they're still drilling. They just, out of the decades, they managed to, as they say, bring it down to a science, and for the most part, not make it leak out. Texas has enough land for years to come. All they need is to take down all the trees and make houses. Well, good point. What is pues says? Pues says, oh, shout out to El Boo Boo. Uh, hey, you guys are really typing a lot. Hey, Norby, what are you doing? I am driving on the 10 freeway right now. Zapata vive. This, when food and land is contaminated, is nothing to be happy about. That's very true. But for the most part, I think our food and water is already contaminated. It's not natural, that's for sure. Only 64 says Africa and South North Korea also have a lot of rare metals. They do. Africa does. But some people don't realize, but Peru also has a lot of rare metals. If not all the metals. From what I hear, they have all the metals there. They're just scattered all over the place. Viva Zapata Viva says capitalism is profit over people, including your own genocide. You're correct. Capitalism is profit, always profit, and that's the thing. I mean, that's how we got to where we're at. Think with your wallet. U.S. still buys the majority of its drugs, cartel, supply and demand. Yeah, for the most part, that's their bread and butter right there. The American people and their addiction. Although Hernandez says Mayor Lasky, a Jewish mobster, was the godfather of Sinaloa plantation and a small head. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to get in on it. But at the same time, and that's the one thing about, Mexican people. They're very collaborative. They will collaborate as long as you don't mess with them. And I think the Jewish people have realized that part. But I think they also realize that they can only take it so far before Mexicans start to retaliate. Because the one thing you don't want to do is piss off a Mexican or screw them over. Because Mexicans are very rebellious, and they very much hate backstabbers. Hey, now is that you're a black Hebrew Israelite like Marvelous? Nah, that's the thing about black Hebrew Israelite. I don't think it's black Hebrew. I don't think the word black is in there. I think for him is everything is based off melanin. Is it melanin? Melanin, melanin, melanin. Yeah, well, There, for in that when they talk about that, it's not about black or brown. It's just about being having melanin, right? That's the part right there that they put together. The Amapola fields. Lada says we had a bad spill in 2010. Oh yeah, in Texas. I remember that. Was it that south of Louisiana? I remember. ACB Chemistry says capitalism is good except when a religious group of people own the money, press, and tax us for their gain. But you see, that's the thing, ACB Chemistry. That falls into capitalism. So you cannot say those are bad things because that falls into the category of capitalism. You make your profit, you invest in companies, and when you have the control, you dictate how those things are run because you it's yours. That's capitalism. Now, right here, they try to use the word communism, socialist. They try to use those words to make it look bad, trying to create a governing system that supports the people, but at the same time holds corporations accountable to put in their part. They paint it with those words, socialism, capitalism, but I don't like those terms because they're very European, Eastern Europe, and Russian words. When I'm talking about raza, we're not thinking about, oh, we're going to use the military to control the government. I mean, to control the people. We're not thinking like that. We just want to be able to, okay, we'll make corporations pay taxes for using so much to make their profit off the country with its people. So they got to get back. And we'll put that into funding for education, infrastructure. You know, we don't, we, and, everything else that people use, we tax them for that. They use cars, we tax their gasoline, you know, to fix the roads. You drink liquor, you drink a lot of liquor and it ends up making you go to the hospital, it makes you sick. We tax liquor, put it into a foundation for healthcare. You know, everything can be done correctly if people are just willing to not take so much. Let's see. Pues says, do politicians in Mexico have crabs in the bucket mentality like Chicano rappers? Well, I'll tell you right now. Right now is an interesting time because the the way Mexican politicians are going at it now is very different because of the way Morena, the current party that's running Mexico right now, as far as the federal government, they're doing things a lot different where they're pushing more policies that will empower the indigenous, specifically the indigenous people of the land. And that's very interesting because they changed so much. Before, only the government can appoint who federal judges are over there. But the current administration changed it so that the people have to vote what judges they want in. So that's a very good thing right there. When the people have the ability to vote in the judges, not somebody's family member in the government would choose a family member to be a judge. Make gold the standing again. The standard again? ACB chemistry. I mean, I've always wondered about that. Hey, shout out to Brad Pitt. He was right. Silver has gone up quite well so far. Gold. I mean, making gold a standard again. I mean, I always thought it was interesting how gold became even a commodity like that. Like how did it become so valuable? I mean, you can't build anything with it. You could make, I don't know, electrical lines with it. You could. That's it. It's a soft metal. I mean, aside from it being rare, somewhat rare, there's not really a whole lot. I mean, diamonds. I get diamonds. You know, they could cut through a lot. You could use industrial. You could use it on industrial machines to cut things. Platinum. Yeah, I can see. I can see that also. But gold. I mean, no. The flat sun is shining through the back window. It sure is. It sure is. The flat sun. Well, not so much anymore. But it was glaring. It was glaring. Shout out to Chris from Arizona and Boss Media. What is? Jeez, you can't. Damn, Fluke, dude, come on. Don't do me like that. ACP Chemistry says if gold was the standard, they can't make more of it. And capitalism. Oh, good point. Good point. Capitalism is the ability to sell your own shit at your own price. Fuck communism and socialism. Well, like I said, ACB chemistry, those are European terms. Those are terms from that side of the world. I think we need to come up with another word, another name for what we're really trying to push. You know, we could call it peopleism. Peopleism. A governance system dedicated to making sure your fellow man is protected, brought up, helped. You know, because honestly, capitalism will be the end of this governing system. It just can't work. It can't work when corporations are funneling all the revenues, and the government only ends up going into more debt. What's going to happen when the government has to say go bankrupt? What are the banks going to do? What is the central bank going to do to the country when the country says we can't pay you guys? What's it going to do? Is it going to take over the White House? Do they have ownership of our weapons here in the country? Is our army going to belong to a bank? Because that's where we're at. We're in the trillions as far as debt. I don't see us paying that anytime soon. Let's see. I might sound like I'm hating on the small head, but they're the creators of capitalism, socialism, feminism, and communism. Whoa. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, to some extent, you're right. 2G internet norms. Well, I mean, maybe. Chris Ramirez says, "What's up, what's up? Oh, what's up, Chris?" Let's see. ACB Chemistry says, "No, America was founded by men of science. Ben Franklin gave the electron a negative charge. Now look at the people in office. Yeah, I rest my case." I don't know if you could really say that was this country was founded on. For the most part, I don't think so. I mean, eventually, yeah, but in reality, this country was founded on greed. It was founded on greed because before it was this country, it was the colonies. And who did those colonies belong to? Well, England. They belong to England and His Highness the King. They belong to them. And then England, as they do to all their other, districts or colonies, started taxing their people. They were taxing their people. But these greedy people were like, wait, why are we paying you guys taxes and you guys are telling us how to work our lands and our lands and we don't get have a say? Why are we giving you money and not have a say? That doesn't make sense. You guys tax us, but we can't do what we want to do in the land that we took. And then they said, yeah, motherfuckers, you belong to us. You're part of us. You're supposed to have loyalty to the king, not loyalty to yourself. And obviously, that was the beginning of taxation without representation. The Boston Tea Party, the domestic terrorist attacks. Well, I don't know if they're domestic, but I guess you could call them domestic. I mean, in reality, you know, they started attacking English buildings, centers. The people started fighting back against the king's men because they wanted more. They wanted power. They wanted a say. So, that being said, ACB chemistry, I would have to disagree with you with this country being founded by science. It wasn't founded by science, it was founded by greed. And it's still, and to add to it, yeah, I mean, looking at the current administration and any administration, it's still the same thing: greed, power. It hasn't changed much. At the end of the day, this country wants as much power and control as it can get. You know what's valuable that doesn't grow anywhere else is the universe. In the universe, trees. Oh, good point. Good point. And that's one thing I noticed. Everywhere, almost everywhere in the world, they either use Adobe, they use some sort of bricks, they use cylinders, they use some sort of material that's not wood. Only the US started using extreme amounts of wood, which also would need a lot of trees being cut down. Pay attention. Okay. Timothy DeVille, what's going on, bro? What we need is water and land to grow our own food. I mean, we do have it. We do have water. We do have land. The thing is that it's got to get controlled. It's got to be controlled because otherwise, if they spread it out, right now they don't have enough families. And when I mean families, I mean white people to run these places, do the farming, do the work, control it, have their employees that they don't pay as much as they should. Well, depending on who it is. Otherwise, they would put a big announcement. Hey, you want to run a farm? Sign up. We'll give you like $5 million to get it going. Water. There's a shit ton of water all over the country that can be transported, just like the same way petroleum is transported, water can be transported also. Look at the Great Lakes of Michigan. One of those lakes is so deep, it's deeper than an ocean. How much water do you think that thing has? And it's fresh water. It's not even ocean water. It's fresh water. Yet it's as deep as an ocean. You use that water. Hey, that's right. But let's face it, guys. I think all of you guys are intelligent enough to know that yeah, the banks do control a lot of the country's policies to fit their own agenda. But again, I can't hate them because it's capitalism. That's capitalism. I mean, you really got to ask yourself when did that name, when did that word capitalism, get created? That word capitalism is probably somewhere there in history when people started saying that word, something happened. Because I want to say that when this country was founded, it wasn't called a capitalist country. It was called a democracy, right? And then little by little, the word democracy, faded away. I mean, they still use it, but they don't use it as much. They use capitalism. ACB Chemistry says, FN banks won't give me any money even if my products are better than the market. Oh, no, I'm sure about that. I am sure about that. No, I'm not, Chris. Don't be jinxing me like that. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky. ACB Chemistry. I mean, okay, you said I don't know how society. Wait, sorry. You don't. I don't. Norbert, you don't know how society works. Well, I mean, who really does? Let's face it, ACB Chemistry. If people knew how society really worked, I think it would be a lot better than what it is now. But clearly, nobody has a handle on what society is because mostly because it's just a mixture of different societies here. So it's a melting pot. I mean, in the beginning, it was the way the English ran the country. The colonials, that's how they started running the 13 colonies. And America, same practices. Except they have a government. They didn't have a hierarchy. They didn't have a king. They had a president. They had a Congress. They had a Senate. They had all these things, and they had English society. They still practice their culture as far as the society, and and it went two ways. That's the crazy part. It went two ways because you also had the French involved. You had some Spaniards. There was a mixture of societies. I mean, now that's just white society. You throw in the black society, it starts becoming something else. Then you throw us, Raza society, which is a completely different thing. I mean, it's not Spanish. I'll tell you that much. We don't take siestas. Although siestas would probably be nice. Let's see. Let's see. Christopher Arizona says the bargain system has always been around, and so is capitalism in a sense. The Mexico would use cocoa beans as currency or trade. You are right, Chris from Arizona. That is correct. And that is trade. But trading and capitalism are way different because if it was capitalism and if with cocoa beans, somebody will own all the cocoa beans. and then the end result would be what this country is. Eventually, and that's why they made the monopoly law, because they knew that if somebody had too much control of something, things are gonna go bad. That's a big no. But as you can see, one a handful of companies are starting to own everything. So clearly, the monopoly thing didn't work because they found loopholes that would allow them to own a lot of everything else. C Doc says God made everything perfect, but man ruined it. Well, I would definitely add. I would have to say, which man? Because that's very important. Which man? Let's see. Henry Romero said Trump freed Palestine. I wish I could say I could. I wish I could agree with that, but there's still much more to be done. There's nothing really much to celebrate as far as what happened so far. Let's see. Zapata Vives, who's printing the currency out of thin air? Yep. ACB Chemistry says not one man or woman can hurt fish and cook and make technology on your own. Society is everyone working in specialized tasks to make it easier. From this nation, we can form products and sell and trade. Hmm. You see, ACB Chemistry, again, I'm going to have to disagree with you with that one, because not everything is going to be about hunting and cooking. I mean, the cooking, yeah, but you got to realize, even though they don't speak about our society how it was before the Spaniards came, before any Europeans stepped foot on these lands, we were in the process of building these things up. I mean, for God's sake, we modified corn to be corn. We we uh we managed to create chocolate. We managed to use vanilla. We managed to do a lot of things that the Europeans didn't have. We managed to produce crops that are now considered superfoods. We didn't base our survival on hunting. We base our way of living through science, biology, for instance. We had the study of biology. Even to this day, it's still being used. So, then these are definitely things that man or woman can do. What you're thinking of is more like European survival tactics, where the man has to hunt and the woman has to cook stuff. But you got to realize that's how far back they are as a society, as a race. That's how far back they were. We were not that far back. We were modifying food so that we didn't have to survive. We were calculating the seasons, monitoring the sun, the moon, even the stars. We were not like them. And we need to stop thinking that that was our history, which is also referred to as hunter gatherers. That is not our history. That is their history. You need to disconnect yourself from their history and really come to accept what your people were doing and are still doing. We were way more advanced to them. I mean, we even say we taught them how to shower. We taught them about living longer lives. For them, a senior citizen was 40 years old. That wasn't that long ago. That was like 300 years ago, maybe. Normal. Let's see. AC because you're wrong. To have a strong economy, money must be flowing and not be stagnant. Rich people don't buy poor people's products. Hmm. Interesting. But yet they buy they well okay, well, would you consider Chinese products poor people products? Because their companies tend to buy a lot of Chinese products to sell. So to make their money. So I want to counter with they do buy poor people's products because they pay poor people prices and then flip it. Man, you guys are on it. Anyways, guys, Norbert, you wouldn't have a car because you don't know how to build it. Our scientists do. Scientists are incorporated in the progress of society that makes shit easier. Well, I mean, for the most part, you're right. They did get ahead of it using the Industrial Revolution, using steam engines, using coals, using all that Industrial Revolution technology. That is true. They created a combustion engine, but again, you got to realize what you see in our history. That isn't all our histories. Clearly, we had capabilities that were beyond what today's technology is. We couldn't have built those pyramids. We couldn't have done all those things without having some sort of moving machine. I wouldn't know what to call it, but we clearly had something that was capable of moving materials that were hundreds of tons. Materials that even by today's technology can't pick up those things without breaking. But that's what I'm telling you. As much credit as you want to give this country, is very much behind. It's very much behind compared to what our ancestors had before. And now, before you guys say, well, what's your evidence to that? Well, that's the thing. Our ancestors made sure that that evidence doesn't show up. For whatever reason, whatever happened back then, for them to say, well, we got to make sure we hide and destroy all these things because we know who's coming. And for the most part, they did. Even to this day, they cannot decipher our hieroglyphs. They can't. The only reason they solved Egyptians' hieroglyphs because they had that stone, that Rosetta Stone. And that if they didn't have that stone, they wouldn't have been able to identify Egyptian hieroglyphs. Here in this side of the world, they're missing that Rosetta Stone. They've been searching for it. They're looking for that stone because they know that stone is hiding somewhere. And they want to know how we did all these things. But that being said, I gotta go, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.